Yes, yes, sir.
Respected whip of the opposition referred to as my leader of opposition 2 times. Respected whip of the opposition refers to he, referring to the leader and the whip 6 times. And we would like to know what is the term banking balance.
The adjudicators will take note.
Sure. All 3 take it. It's a bank balance.
Am I allowed to answer?
But that is a grammatical error. You don't get a POO for it. And no, we not start to a debate. Just the 2 POs, he gets the marks scored and rest is taken up. It's not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, I invite.
I'm providing some rebuttals here. The first rebuttal is one of the members of the opposition referred in physics. Now, I'd like to state here, the more the negative charge a body loses, the more positive charge it acquires. The next rebuttal is in the case of birth. Now, a lady does lose her charm and her beauty, and she goes under pain, so that was the rebuttal number 2. Now, the rebuttal number credit limit of a company. These are 2 different things. Now, one of the members of the opposition referred to Mamata Banerjee and some politics. Now, I'd like to state an example here. Now, 2 political parties in Punjab, that is the Akal Dal and the BJP, they have joined together to form a very successful story in Punjab. Now, I'd like to close the house here by concluding here by saying that at all the stages of life, many negative combinations are there, and they always make up a positive combination. Thank you.
Take it. Sorry, it's not a POO again. Right.
So have we come to the end of this debate? It was a great debate from both the sides. Congratulations to the teams. And now let us give some time to...
Today. So the purpose of the second session is, as you can see, that the jury will take some time before they come up with the final decision. And Mr. D.L. Sharma very gracefully agreed to give a wonderful session today. Mr. D.L. Sharma needs no introduction in the audience. So not only has he been one of the founder members of LMA, but he has also been one of the past presidents also of LMA. He has been a great pillar to LMA all through. So today, yesterday when we requested him, although the time was very short, but he readily agreed to be amongst us, and he chose a wonderful topic, as we can see, managerial effectiveness through processes. So he himself has created a lot of a great success story in his group. So today we would like to listen from him. Mr. D.L. Sharma.
Past President, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. Mr. Vadera has called me up about 48 hours before to fill in the blanks. This subject seems to be very, very soft subject, but I'm not sure it will be of interest to some of you. This is a kind of a quick lecture I will run through, practically dealing with the conceptual part of the managerial processes and managerial effectiveness and organizational processes, and how the organization, whether small or large, can really initiate, develop, institutionalize in their own respective organizations. In the common parlance, we are all part of the Ghana Management Association, which was originated in the late 70s, and some of us sitting here are the original, the members from LMA. The basic aim throughout the years that how we may not forget the basic purpose of this management association and try to imbibe the learnings out of this and share the learnings within the members and try to apply it within our own organizations. This presentation is based on the studies and research done by Professor David Garvin in the Harvard Business School. And I had the opportunity to take a course with him. And out of some of the learnings which I thought I prepared quickly because the time was short. So generally normally we always perceive that management is getting work done from people. Because the organizations are social entities. They are run through the organization. There are machines, there are buildings, but there are people who drive the organizations. So therefore, the management is supposed to get the work done from the people. And the management is supposed to take decisions, whether big or small. And the managers who work, who could be part of management, who could be working for management, are supposed to drive the organizations by taking decisions, by coordinating activities of the people, by integrating the inside-outside environment, because the organizations don't work in isolation, they work in integration with the overall complexities of factors within and outside the organization. The managers have the process of communication with these people within the organization, communication with the customer, clients, suppliers, the government agencies, environment outside the organization. And they influence with their personality the whole of the organization in an integrated manner. And certainly they take credit for the performance of the organization. But basically I feel that the manager's prime responsibility is ultimately as a manager to carry the management direction. If it's an owner manager, he is to carry the direction of the management. If there is some management body, whether a partnership or a management board of management, to carry their direction and primarily focus on the execution. Because the large decisions are taken. As Ramcharan has said, that execution is the hallmark of making an organization successful. The managerial effectiveness is is basically determined, because the manager has to manage the resources, convert them, use them, utilize the resources, and therefore the effectiveness with which the resources of the organization are utilized to create efficiencies and to create products and services. I think that is what the managerial effectiveness will be. And managerial effectiveness is not aligned, is not dedicated or assigned to one manager. This could be a group of manager or management teams. The managers has to maximize the collective outputs of the team and the group performance. They have to add the value and create the value of the organization and achieving the organizational objectives of producing goods and services and providing the services to the customers both within the organization and outside the organization through people, the structure within the organization, the systems and processes. We must differentiate between the management and leadership. The management is primarily on the operational part. The major focus is the operational, on the operational of activity, the budgeting activities, organizing and staffing of the organization, controlling and problem solving. But the focus is has to produce a degree of predictability of order and has the potential of constantly producing short-term results. So the management focus is primarily on the short-term focus, whereas the leadership is to establish direction, aligning with the people, which is basically having a work philosophy and motivating the workforce, and therefore produces changes which has potential of producing extremely useful change in the form of the new products, new innovations, new approaches of managing, even new processes for a long-term sustainability of the organization. The process perspective, when the subject is on the managerial effectiveness linked with the organizational processes, is to focus on the processes or collection of tasks and activities. The processes are primarily a collection of tasks and activities which together and only together transform inputs into outputs, which allow the organization to view and manage material, information, people in a more integrated manner. Processes are a sequence of interlinked tasks and activities that provide an integrated dynamic picture of the organizational and managerial behavior. A process structure is different from hierarchical and vertical organizational structure because the process structure could be parallel, it could be across the organization, it could be across the department, it could be across the function. There could be process owners which could be different than the general management, functional management, supervisory management, and the shop floor. But the process owner could run across the organization, and it could be, a person having the ownership of process, introducing information technology or ERP in an organization. It could be separately part of the structure. Understanding further the focus in the organization processes on how the work gets done in contrast to what products or services are provided. It is primarily processes multi-level, multifunctional character of the organizational action. It is basically the product versus the process innovation. Processes seldom follows the existing boundaries and organizational power structure. If they go beyond the organization and beyond the power structure which is defining the stated power structure of an organization. The process ownership, as it mentioned, is as compared to formal vertical structure is totally different because the person who drives the process may not be directly reporting as a part of the organizational structure, it could be laterally reporting to the organizational structure. The Japanese said that they spend twice as much time on the process development as compared to the product development. So that's the kind of work to make work done using processes to ultimately facilitate the performance orientation. The organization processes, they are characterized into three groups. First is the work processes, which primarily deal at the operational level. Right, in a small organization, there is a manufacturing process, there is operation, there are inputs are being transformed into outputs, and ultimately this is an operational process. There could be a sales process or a marketing process, taking the product to the customer, going through the channel in the market, and they are supported and supplemented by the administrative process, which could be, for example, the ERP process could be there, the HR processes could be there as part of the administration. So they primarily deal within the back limit of the organization in the factory for manufacturing, in the market for the sales and distribution. The work processes are certainly embedded with the behavioral processes. And the behavioral processes, they are primarily, these are some of those which are just classified as examples, are the decision-making process, which is part of the behavioral process, the communication process, the organizational learning. And both these work processes and behavioral process, they are in a parallel working on a continuous basis through a change process. Because we are in a continual change, the change is being induced from the organization from outside the organization. And therefore the change processes could be incremental and involving a startup company that is going into a small company, into a medium company, into a large company. And therefore the changes linked to the size and complexity of the organization could be evolving and incremental. And there could be induced changes because of the technology, because of the change. The induced or revolutionary. All of a sudden in an organization, there is an invention or a valuable one-time, first-time invention. Now that could amount to bringing a change or adaptation of a change. And a bit more work processes may involve multifunctional, multi-level, multi-stage sequences of activities. They accomplish the work of the organization. They have customers. They could be organizations, internal customers from one department to another department, because the work of one department will be external customers in the marketplace. The operational processes, normally they create, produce and deliver products and services, that is in distribution. The order to cash cycle could be a one integrated process encompassing many of the above mentioned processes, and technology selection. These are some of the examples of the operational processes in the organization. The administrative processes to support them will be the budgeting, planning, accounting, HR, performance management, so on and so forth. They are not basically, they don't produce products directly or service directly, but they facilitate the production of products and services. The behavioral processes, they have roots in the organizational theory and the group dynamics. They earlier mentioned they're embedded in the work processes and reflect recurring ways of acting and interacting. They infuse and shape the way work is being conducted or by influencing the individual and group's behavior. Decision making is one of the behavioral processes which every organization, whether small or large, has to make decisions. It is a process rather than a discrete event. One can say that decision I can be yes or no, but actually the process, if it is structurally institutionalized in an organization. Managers see it as a personal responsibility rather than a shared, dispersed activity that they must orchestrate and lead. Because actually decision making in an organization is a culmination of the feelings, thought processes, value systems, and group thinking that ultimately supports and that's the decision-making process. The decision-making processes are generally lengthy, they are complex and slow to change. Each organization has its own unique culture, unique way of decision-making. And that way of decision-making is not, because it's embedded in the behavior, conflicting resolutions, speed of decision-making, flexibility, etc., etc. There are issues to be addressed for making a decision. The communication process in an organization, in terms of their goals, they form because they are written, they are through email, they are verbal, tutorials, mechanism, how do we communicate, how do people communicate within the organization, what is the environment of openness, feedback, discussion, flow, the contents of the information, the management information systems in the organization, they all form part of the communication process. Then ultimately it is the outcome of a continuum of all these complexities of process interaction and process dynamics leads to the organizational learning. And organizational learning is essential for the organization health and survival. The organization learning involves the creation, acquisition, interpretation, retention and transfer of new knowledge. It's a little complex process. Long back I studied a book on knowledge creating company, written by a Japanese author. One of the examples he has given was that this company was in the food company and they were trying to see what kind of products to be developed. In one of the hotels in Japan, a particular chef was making the bread And the bread was a particular, he has a different style of making the bread. And so a unique bread by the virtue of taste people used to buy there, especially at come there for eating. And they wanted to commercialize to make that bread for a mass distribution. And therefore they wanted to see, but that knowledge was in form of a basic knowledge with the chef there. And they wanted to, translate that basic knowledge into an explicit knowledge so that they can translate and develop it and mechanize the production of this bread. The knowledge engineer was recruited there, not one, a series of knowledge engineers to study with the chef and pick up the basic knowledge which is had. And they may not be able to pick up 100% of that, but to a large extent by years or by months of working with that chef, understanding that, bringing it back to the organization, developing the right technology to emulate that knowledge to producing the bread. And ultimately, I think after a number of years of research, they were able to successfully develop a brand and launch in the market. That's the kind of, the knowledge creation, how the knowledge creation as a cycle, is a process which is part of the organization learning. The organization learning also involves processes such as intelligence gathering, benchmarking, the best practices comparisons, the experimentations, after action reports as in the US Army. The change processes are basically all of us facing change as individuals, as organizations, as countries, as states, as nations. They focus on the sequence of events over time because the world will continue and therefore there are sequences which are, the weather changes, there are life cycles, there are product life cycles, there are human life cycles, there are organizational life cycles. So the change processes are linked with the sequence over time. They are actually dealing with how individuals, groups and organizations, they adopt, develop and grow. They are dynamics and they catch reality in the flight. There are always changes in the moving. This is a kind of a dynamic programming. That deals with effectuation and changes in behavioral and work processes. They alter the scale, character and identity of the organization. That how an organization is adaptive to changes. They are autonomous, could be autonomous or induced. They could be incremental and revolutionary, as I mentioned earlier. They deal with the life cycle of the products, the life cycle of the organization, because each life cycle has to go through a creation stage, through a growth stage, through a transformation, and ultimately decline. And how do we really respond in each of these stages of the life cycle? I think they imbibe the change processes. Just to summarize them, that we start from the management, which is primarily looking into the work processes, the behavioral processes, the work processes which produce products for customers or generate information for internal use. The behavioral processes are widely shared patterns of acting and interacting. The change processes which describe how individual groups and organizations adopt, develop and grow over time. And ultimately it's lead to the strategic part of the organization's working, where leadership role comes, and they are the strategic processes which involve creating, formulation, and execution of the plans. They must be aligned with the business environment, organizational culture, and business needs. Just quickly running through the Workman example, because I've been working with Workman for a long time, and just seen the organization from a standalone one unit in 1973 when I joined as management training. And after 40 years, the organization has also grown into a multi-units, multi-businesses, multi-location organization. And today, Workman is about 5,200 crores of the business. We are primarily into textile and R&D, right from throughout the value chain of the business, the yarn, weaving, spinning, weaving, etc., making sewing that the required ready-made garments. 21 units spread in 5 states with 26,000 deployment. The growth process post-90s, just in terms of turnover, 95 from 380 crores to 5,200 crores.